Hey now, 580 Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you for the next 2 hours today. That's right, just a 2-hour show today, 3 until 5, because we've got the Sunflower Showdown, a.k.a. the Clash on the Caw. Shout out to Jesse Newell. Coming up tonight, pregame coverage begins 5 o'clock on the K-State Sports Radio Network. Tip-off at 6 at Bramlage Coliseum. For the Kansas Jayhawks and the Kansas State Wildcats, the most important and really only important Sunflower Showdown in the last 4 years. It has been since the 2018-19 season that this game on the basketball court meant anything to these two programs, and it means a whole heck of a lot tonight. If KU wins, they're going to be 2 games up on K-State in the Big 12 standings, and KU will remain undefeated in the Big 12 standings. If KU loses and K-State bounces back from this weekend's loss with a win, K-State is right back in a tie in the driver's seat in the Big 12 standings. So much to get to with that game. We're going to talk all about it in the 4 o'clock hour today. So 2 hours, 3 o'clock is going to be almost all NFL. 4 o'clock hour is going to be almost all Sunflower Showdown, plus What Is Wrong With You. Michael Swain is going to join us in the 4 o'clock hour for Jayhawk Weekly. Matt Verderame is going to join us this hour, bottom of the hour, for our weekly chat on all things NFL. We were obviously off yesterday due to Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So Matt, kind enough to be flexible with his schedule and join us today instead, and we appreciate him doing so. And again, we will talk all about Super Wildcard Weekend, and I think it's fair to say that it was fairly super. It was a pretty enjoyable weekend. 6 games, 4 were entertaining.
Yeah, lived up to the name, which was a little bit surprising. I would say 4 of them were entertaining. 5 of them had a chance to be entertaining. The game got away from the Seahawks against the 49ers. That was about 2.5 quarters of an entertaining football game.
Agreed.
Until I was talking to Jake off the air, and I said it was like watching watching a pitcher throw 6 really good innings and then give up back-to-back home runs in the 7th.
Yep.
Like that was that game. And then, but yeah, we got 4 bangers down to the wire football games. Sunday was fabulous, like way better than any of us were anticipating.
Oh, yeah.
The expected AFC blowouts were not that. All the AFC games were great. Monday night was a dud, but at least it was funny watching Brett Maher miss extra points.
Man, we saw a dude develop the yips in front of the whole world. God and everyone saw him become Chuck Knobloch. That is unbelievable. Seriously, truly unbelievable. We're going to talk about all those games. And again, we will get to plenty of Sunflower Showdown preview in the 4 o'clock hour today. If you would like to be a part of the show, you know the drill at this point. Hit us up on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. Let us know your thoughts on tonight's game, on anything from Wildcard Weekend. The Chiefs matchup with the Jaguars. We'll get to that included in our Wildcard Weekend wrap-up. Excuse me. Let us know your thoughts on all of it, 785-272-9429. And, of course, you can hit us up on YouTube as well. Comment section is open on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the account name. The comment section is open for the next 2 hours. Let's have a lot of fun. You can watch us. Again, that is on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. Let's get right into it. NFL action from the weekend. We had a lot of exciting games, a lot of thrilling games. I think the most important place to start, though, when you tie it in locally, when you tie it into the Kansas City Chiefs, we know who they will be playing. It was all chalk in the AFC. So the Jacksonville Jaguars end up facing the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round of the playoffs that's coming up on Saturday afternoon this week. The Chargers played the Jaguars this weekend. And you know how we have talked about in college basketball that Duke, North Carolina has changed forever, and North Carolina will always have the ultimate trump card. They beat Duke, not just in the Final Four, but they beat Duke in Coach K's final game in the Final Four.
And for all of the games that they will play in the future, none of them will ever be those two.
Never.
Those two belong to North Carolina forever.
That changed that rivalry to a degree, for forever, permanently. Chargering has been changed forever. Anything in the past, the 900 times Phillip Rivers was down by 1 score late in a game and threw an interception.
Or fumbled.
Marlon McCree intercepting a pass and then fumbling it in the 2006 AFC Championship game. All the other moments that they have had in their history where they came up just short because they had some sort of hilarious calamity to lose a game, or even the year they had the number one offense and number one defense in terms of total yards in the NFL, yet had statistically the worst special teams in league history and missed the playoffs entirely. All of those pale in comparison to leading the Jacksonville Jaguars 27-0 in the second quarter of a playoff game, having a +5 turnover margin and losing. And we always play this game whenever there's a big comeback, especially with the Chiefs, because they've had so many of them. At what point did you know the Chiefs would win? Or at what point did you know KU would complete the comeback in basketball, or whatever it ends up being? I knew that second Jaguars touchdown. I said, oh, it's happening. It is absolutely happening. Because it was inevitable. You could see it on their faces on the sideline. You could see it in the offense. Their defense obviously fell apart. We were watching the meltdown happen. It was unbelievable, but at the same time, it was the Chargers, so of course it was believable.
I thought Jacksonville had a chance going into the locker room down 27-7 when they scored late in the first half. I don't think I'd have thought that about any other team in these playoffs with a 20-point halftime lead after they had completely flummoxed Jacksonville's offense. They made Trevor Lawrence look like he was completely out of his depth. They played a great first half on the defensive side. That secondary is flying around. They were getting pressure. Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa were getting the pressure that they usually get. And they were good value for that 27-0 lead, man. They earned it. That wasn't an accident. They earned it.
Yep.
But Jacksonville scored to make it 27-7. And then it's just in the DNA of the Charger franchise. In the back of your mind, you're thinking, man, if anybody's going to blow this, if anybody's going to piddle down their leg, a 27-point playoff lead, wouldn't it be the Chargers?
Oh, yeah.
And then, it just kept rolling downhill. I mean, Jacksonville got confidence. They got belief. Trevor Lawrence, for as poorly as he played in the first half, and he was terrible. He threw the 4 interceptions, but he didn't scare.
No.
He's been in big games, and he knows there's 60 minutes. He's been down in big games before. He's been playing big games his whole life. High school, college. He didn't scare. He just kept moving the ball down the field. They made adjustments in the second half, and then the Chargers on offense, they did what they've done all year. Not give Austin Eckler enough touches and go 3 and out a bunch. And it did. It just felt like a tidal wave after a while. Then when Joey Bosa had the nuclear meltdown after they scored to make it 30-26, you could tell that was a Charger team that had lost its cool, that had lost its poise. Loved Doug Peterson going for the 2-point conversion. Brilliant bit of game theory there. Instead of kicking the extra point, the reason you go for 2 there is because now if you get it, a field goal wins the game. You're not playing to tie. You want to win the football game. Going for 2 means that if you get it, you can kick a field goal and you can win the game. If you don't get it, you know at the end of the game that a touchdown wins it, and you play the final drive accordingly.
It's about controlling as many variables as you can and not creating new variables. Because even if you go down 3, there is data to prove that teams are far more conservative down 3 than down 4+ at the end of a game. There's tons of empirical evidence behind that. But also, you kick the field goal, the game is tied. You just created a whole new set of variables with overtime. You lose the coin. I know everybody gets the ball twice now, but hey, you lose the coin toss, win the coin toss, get that changes everything. Go control as many things as you can control. You can control knowing what you need to end the game. Doug Peterson's an incredible coach. He really, really is.
There's a reason he's got a Super Bowl ring, and Brandon Staley had to fire his offensive coordinator and his passing game coordinator today.
And honest to God,
just to keep his own job.
I was going to say, he should have lost his job for this. And I know it's easy to talk about someone else's job, and to a degree it's unfair, but also it comes with the territory of coaching and with our jobs as well. Between that horrible showing in Week 18, which also saw Mike Williams fracture his back and not be available for this game.
Would have been nice to have him, I'm sure.
No kidding. And then to completely melt down like they did in the second half against that Jacksonville team when they were down and out. +5 in the turnover margin, man. That had never happened in the NFL in the playoffs before to decide a game. I mean, just Unbelievable. I cannot believe Staley kept his job.
Yeah.
I really cannot.
I think he had to fire Joe Lombardi. I'm sure that came from on high. Like, you've got to fix this offense. Like, we shouldn't look like this on offense with Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen and the 6 games you get Mike Williams for each year. Like, it shouldn't look like that. It can't look like that. And maybe if it doesn't look like that moving forward, the Chargers will reach their ceiling under Brandon Staley. Maybe that's still possible. But in the end, there is a ceiling on the Chargers, and they are their own worst enemy, and that has been written in the stars since Marty Schottenheimer was their head coach.
That sets up Chiefs-Jags. We'll obviously talk about that game plenty over the next couple of days as we get ready for it again, coming up on Saturday. The other games in the AFC. The Bills it looked like they were going to win 80-0. I mean, they were going up and down the field, no problem at the start of the game. And you credit Miami for fighting back and for keeping it close. You also need to put Mike McDaniel's brain under a microscope and look at what is going on, because the way they bungled the end of that game is unthinkable.
A touching tribute to Nathaniel Hackett, wherever he is.
And you want some more clock mismanagement? Let's go to the other AFC game, the nightcap, in which John Harbaugh,
a veteran coach with a ring,
I think John Harbaugh's a great coach. I really honestly do. But I don't know what happened to the Harbaughs at Christmas dinner that made them decide, let's just not care about the clock and pretend it's a total social construct at this point. But he completely bungled the end of that game. Yes, to be fair, it's ironic to bungle against the Bungles. It is unfortunate and an unbelievable swing that in the span of less than 2 yards, the Ravens went from being up 7 to down 7, thanks to tremendous defensive plays by Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson to knock the ball out. And this is what happens with the prolate spheroid. Sometimes it bounces funny, right into Sam Hubbard's arms with no one in front of him.
Little man tried to make a big man play. Tyler Huntley is not a big guy.
No.
And he tried to make the big guy play. He tried to make like a Josh Allen play or the Trevor Lawrence play. Trevor Lawrence is a big kid.
Big dude.
Reach the ball up over that pylon. Can't do it if you're little man.
Especially when you got... That was...
You ever known a big man to be nicknamed Snoop? No.
It comes up sometimes in football at the line. A lot of times in basketball with block shots. Oh, I blocked it like a volleyball player. Okay, when you go up with one hand, it's not blocking like a volleyball player. Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt went up like they were sliding to cover an outside hitter, 2 hands up, piking the body. It was incredible.
Yeah.
That play swung that game, but then the Ravens completely brain farted at the end. Harbaugh messed up the timeout situation royally. Bengals end up winning. With those 2 games, we had a texter in here on the Big O Tigers text line as well that asked from the 402, how do you think Skylar Thompson played? I don't think Skylar was good.
No.
I don't think he was awful. I don't think he was good. He is not exclusively the reason they lost. And at some point, too, if you're Mike McDaniel, you've got to say, look, obviously there's an issue with the conveyor belt here with the system of me getting to play into him getting it to the players, breaking the huddle and snapping. You've got to make an adjustment. That's a first-year head coach that did not know what to do in that situation. So with all those things in mind, does your confidence in the Bills and Bengals, and they're going to play each other now, does your confidence in either or both of those teams change after watching them barely escape on Sunday?
So we've watched every snap that the Kansas City Chiefs have played this year. And if you're a Chiefs fan, you've probably watched every snap, or at least every snap that you can possibly watch of the Kansas City Chiefs. And when you watch a team like that, you see all the good stuff they do, and you see all the bad stuff that they do. And sometimes the bad stuff leaves a bit more of an impression than even the good stuff at times. So as viewers of the Chiefs, as people who have picked through every snap of the Chiefs with a fine-tooth comb, we feel like we see them and we see what their strengths are, but we're also intimately familiar with their weaknesses, with their difficulties against lesser competition this year, with their tendency to turn the ball over in bad situations and things of that nature. Like, we're intimately familiar with their foibles in a way that you're not as familiar with the foibles of other great teams, because you're not watching every play, every snap. You're not hanging on every result of the Bills and the Bengals. But the Bills and the Bengals both had flaws put up there on the Summer Jam screen for everybody to see on Sunday. For the Bills, it's very simple. Josh Allen, for all of his gifts and for that big, big arm of his, has not played like an elite quarterback this season.
He does not value the ball.
He is not taking good care of the football. And because there's not really a viable running threat in that Buffalo offense, it is all Josh Allen. He has to do it all for them. And it very nearly went sideways for Buffalo in that game. That is their great flaw. For Cincinnati, it's the offensive line. Yeah. It's the offensive line, and they took more of a hit with some injuries. They're already down Lyle Collins. Alex Kappa's status for the rest of the playoffs is questionable. So now is Jonah Williams. That's 3 starters they're down for a unit that wasn't that spectacular in the first place. And they also have trouble running the football. So their flaws now are on display. I think if you're a Chiefs fan or a Chiefs observer, you feel better about your team having seen in a very prominent way in a do-or-die game that, wait a minute, we're only going to have to play one of these teams, first of all. And second of all, they're flawed too. Like, you prick them, they bleed. And sometimes it doesn't feel like that when you look up and there's the highlight of Josh Allen throwing one 65 yards and, oh boy, the Bills won again. Or, oh boy, the Bengals won again. There's 100 yards for T. Higgins, 100 yards for Jamar Chase, all that. But no, those are flawed teams. Those are flawed teams, and their flaws were on display for everyone to see this weekend while the Chiefs got to rest. I think the Chiefs had the best weekend of any AFC team.
I would agree with that. And I don't think you can necessarily, I think there's also the argument, I'll put it this way, that these are divisional games. You've played these teams a couple of times already. They know each other well. It's hard to game plan against those teams. I would say that is a more reasonable argument in the Bengals-Ravens game than it is in the Bills-Dolphins game. The Bills were cruising. They were having no issue at all with the Dolphins. And then suddenly it stopped. And then Josh Allen stopped protecting the ball and being smart with the football. And then things started to snowball like they have in multiple games for the Bills over the course of the season. I think after this weekend, there's more worry about Buffalo than there is about Cincinnati. And I think Cincinnati's concern with their offensive line, 100% true. Like Hakeem Adeniji has been playing the last couple weeks. You guys started in the Super Bowl last year. He's now their swing tackle, which is probably for the best.
He had a rough game.
He was not great. He really was not. But it's also, you can get by with one weak link in the chain. 3 out of 5 being backups for an already iffy offensive line, tough place to be. Really tough place to be. And now you take away deep action to Burrow and Higgins and Boyd and all that. And, you go 3 deep, 3 vertical routes. Hayden Hurst do a 10-yard dig over the middle. You lose that because you've got less time to throw. Burrow's got to get it out quickly. So instead of beating guys deep, now Jamar Chase becomes a yak guy. He becomes get it to him within 5 yards, then have him make a play, as opposed to it's one-on-one down the field. All he needs to do is break one tackle and he's gone. That changes their whole offense.
It does. And I want to add this too. Another reason I think the Chiefs had the best weekend of any AFC team. The Chiefs, like most other teams, struggle with facing those game-wrecking presences in the front seven. Like those speed rushers, those guys who can absolutely wreck shop as pass rushers. I think there's only one of those left in the AFC, and his name is Chris Jones.
That's true.
I think all the rest of them are either home or hurt. Like, there are good players in the front seven. Don't get me wrong. Like the Bills still have Ed Oliver, and they have some other good players in that front seven.
Rousseau's been playing well.
Yeah, Greg Rousseau's a good player. The Bengals still have Trey Hendrickson, even though he's playing with one hand, still an impactful guy. But like the game wreckers, the dudes that can make it so you only ever have to rush 4, and that would make Patrick Mahomes' life difficult in the postseason, those guys went home because those guys blew a 27-0 lead on Saturday.
And the other best one hasn't played for most of this, or for the whole back half of the season. He's a Bill. Von Miller.
Yeah, Miller. Yeah, that's hurt.
He's out there. That changes that game. I actually think Bills-Bengals is going to be close because while the Bills can take advantage of that Bengals bad offensive line, you know what the Bengals have been really good at defending this year? The pass and getting after the quarterback. Now, I think that's going to be a really fun matchup. I do want to get to the NFC games here real quick. Giants-Vikings. That game was, I think, the best, like, in terms of level of and quality of play for 60 minutes, was the best game of the weekend. It was also entirely predictable. Like, wow, 2 things that we knew were coming both came. The Vikings defense could not stop a nosebleed, and Kirk Cousins threw short of the sticks on 4th down because he was scared to throw the ball down the field.
4th in the season, and he threw a mile short of the sticks to a tight end. Like, just the quintessential Kirk Cousins. He is who we know him to be. He's never going to be anything more than what we already know him to be. And this is what you get when Kirk Cousins is your quarterback. You get to go home early.
I would also like to know, though, because they said after the game that was a choice route for TJ Hawkinson. He deserves a little bit of the blame because I understand you have to get open and you are reading the defense. It's fourth in the season. You have to make sure that choice of yours gets you to the line of script or gets you to the first down marker. You can't be running that route at that point if you're TJ Hawkinson. But no, 95% of the blame for that play goes on Kirk. But by the same token, they could not stop anyone. Daniel Jones, he looked better than Michael Vick in that game. He was unstoppable. Yeah. He could not be touched.
He made himself a lot of money on Sunday. A lot of money. He looks like a guy you can give the keys to.
Yeah. And the other thing, they couldn't defend crossers all game long. Saquon, leak out of the backfield, cross, easy. Drag route to Richie James, open constantly. Like, what were you practicing? Seriously, what in the world were you practicing all week to lead up for that? And Greg Olsen said on the broadcast, well, we know they respect Daniel Jones' running ability. You sure? I don't think they do. The other games, there's not really much to say about San Francisco. I mean, you kind of already covered it.
The thing that I will say about the 49ers, they got so many weapons.
Yep.
And right now, Brock Purdy is like a point guard with 45% three-point shooters around him on offense.
Just like Northwest Missouri State right now.
Yeah, just get the ball to the shooters and let them do what they do. In Seattle, not nearly good enough in the front seven, not nearly good enough on the back end to stay in that game. They played the game they had to play right up until Geno Smith fumbled, and then it got pear-shaped on them real quick. But I know there are a lot of people rushing to crown the 49ers as the favorites in the NFC because they do. They look dangerous. They look scary. They got those game wreckers we talked about in their front seven, Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead and guys like that. But at some point, some defense is going to make it hard on Brock Purdy for 60 minutes. And the defense to do that might just be the defense they see next week. If it's the same guys that came out and made Tom Brady look like he needs to retire last night in Tampa Bay.
That leads me to my final question because we got to get to a break here. Is this it for Brady?
No, he's going to quarterback the Raiders next year. I would bet on it. And speaking of betting, the NFL playoffs are heating up. And with FanDuel, every play is a rush. New customers join today so you can bet the divisional round with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up with my promo code Lucero. $150 in free bets. Man, what I wouldn't give to have a $150 free bet to put on, say, Patrick Mahomes going over on his passing yards against the Jaguars. America's #1 sportsbook has all your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads, player props. Plus, with FanDuel, you can combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. All in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, with promo code Lucero, and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. You must be 21 and present in Kansas. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable free bets. It expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help's your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
We've got to get to a break. The good, bad, and the ugly is next on 580 Sports Talk. Time to recap the long holiday weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly here on 580 Sports Talk. My good, real quick, from the KU game on Saturday. KU won over Iowa State, by the way. One of my good friends from college, who I did college radio with over at KJHK at KU, his dad, Jeff Long, not that Jeff Long, different Jeff Long, was honored at the under-12 timeout in the first half as part of KU's Salute to Service. Spent 20-plus years as an Air Force pilot. Bunch of different decorations, bunch of different honors for his service. It was awesome. It was very cool to see him out there for that family. So shout out to Jackson, to his dad, Jeff, and the whole Long family.
Very, very cool. For my good, a lot of the football games were really good, but I just got to give the Jaguars so much credit for coming back from 27 down to win that game, precipitating the chargering ethos that has plagued the Chargers franchise forever, but also maybe redefining the Jacksonville Jaguars a little bit. They've been a punchline for the better part of their existence as an NFL franchise. But with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson, they might have the quarterback and a coach to be a problem in the AFC for some years to come.
I'm going to go with coaching and time management as my bad for the weekend. Both Mike McDaniel and John Harbaugh just completely butchering end-of-game situations. Different kinds of situations, but horribly done nonetheless. Harbaugh not knowing when to use his timeouts. They were on total opposite sides of the timeout spectrum. McDaniel had burned through all of his with like 6 minutes left in the game, and a quarterback who clearly was struggling to get the play in. Meanwhile, Harbaugh was willing to take an extra timeout into the offseason when his team really badly needed it because they were huddling with a running clock with under a minute to go. So coaching clock management's my bad for the weekend.
My bad, a couple of really bad personal foul penalties this weekend. As always, the officiating leaving something to be desired in the NFL. The one they called on, I think it was Dexter Lawrence of the Giants on Kirk Cousins, was just appallingly bad and really kind of stands out to me. Again, the standard is so poor right now for officiating in the NFL. It's got to be better. My
ugly pair of players from last night's game. Tom Brady sucked yesterday.
Oh, my God, he was bad.
You can tell me he threw for 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. No, he sucked. That's one of the worst games Tom Brady has ever played. He looked awful. Whole offense looked bad. There's a reason Byron Leftwich got fired today. Brady looked horrible. And Brett Maher, CFL legend.
Oh, my God.
Look, dude, you can't miss 4 straight extra points. You just can't do it. And but also, Mike McCarthy, stop sending him out. You're going to ruin his confidence for next week.
I watched the Manning cast last night. I don't normally watch the Manning cast for like the full game. I'm in and out on the Manning cast here and there. I think it's fun, but I like Joe Buck and Troy Aikman mostly, so I usually stick with that broadcast. But I watched the Manning cast for all of last night because I wanted to see what would happen the next time they sent Maher out there to miss a kick. I thought Peyton Manning was going to break the camera.
I thought so too.
Set up. I've never seen him so upset. Like, he wasn't that mad at me. He's screaming at Jeff Saturday on the sideline during his playing days about running the ball.
Yelling about Mike Vanderjagt.
He was so mad when he missed that fourth extra point. Like, I'm glad for Brett Maher that he made the 5th one, and that probably saved his job. Like, if he'd gone 0 for 5 on extra points, they would have had to go find another kicker going to next week. So it saved his job for the short term, but now nobody's going to feel good about their kicking game going into the divisional round of the playoffs. Yeah, that was bad. And then Brady, like he just got the playbook and just met his wide receivers. Some of the throws he's making, nowhere close to guys, and he's gesturing down the field. Guys, you got to do the thing I told you. Yeah, sure, Tom. That's not just you being washed.
Is that your ugly too?
That is my ugly.
That'll take us to another timeout. Matt Verderame of Fansided joins us next on 580 Sports Talk.
understand football, Marge. Matt.
Pain heals. Chicks dig scars. Glory lasts forever.
How can you not be romantic about football, man?
Matt Verderame covers the whole NFL for Fansided.com, and he joins us usually on Mondays at this time, but because of the holiday, Matt was kind enough to switch his schedule around to join us on Tuesday this week. Head over to Fansided to check out all of Matt's fantastic work covering the NFL, and of course, you can find him on Twitter as well, at Matt Verderame. Matt, real quick, before we get to a crazy wildcard weekend, we've got a big rivalry basketball game in our part of the country coming up tonight, Kansas versus Kansas State on the hardwood. Of all the teams you are a fan of, who's your most hated rival for any of them? Like, which team can you just not stand that's a rival to one of your own?
I guess probably the Philadelphia Flyers. I'm a Devils fan in hockey, so that team can't lose enough, which is good because they lose all the time now. They stink.
Yeah, hockey really brings it out of you, doesn't it, in a way that other sports don't. Really, like, I still hate the Detroit Red Wings, and the Avalanche and the Red Wings aren't even the same conference anymore.
The great thing about hockey is, if the teams hate each other, they can punch the daylights out of each other, and it's a 5-minute penalty.
Yeah.
You can really let out that anger. You can let out that hate, and it's fine. Come back out 5 minutes later, and everybody's good to go.
Well, Matt, we do have a ton to get to from Super Wildcard Weekend. Hard to even pick where to start, but we'll tie it back to our local team, the Kansas City Chiefs. Was that the ultimate chargering on Saturday? Like, will it ever be topped, that version of chargering?
Let's not rule it out, because if we learn anything with the Chargers, it's all on the table. I will say this. I was sitting there 27-0 watching the game in my recliner in my office, and I never had a notion to flip the channel for 5 seconds because I always felt like the Chargers, it's very possible they lose this game, and I don't want to miss it because I'll write my column about it. Right as rain, they lost. It was a ridiculous combination of things. First of all, to lose that game once you're up 27-0 without turning the ball, without giving up a huge return, touchdown, something like that, is almost impossible. The Chargers managed to do it. Joey Bosa having just, I think it's fair to say, a full-blown temper tantrum.
Yep.
That just cost his team 2 massive personal foul calls. And I don't even know what he was upset at. Like, I understand he thought there was a false start. I mean, okay, it happened. Like, it doesn't give you the right to just go insane and get 2 personal fouls. Like, they fell apart in a way that it felt like a team that is not coached well. It is a team that, when things started to go sideways, they just went completely sideways, and there was no coming back from it. And I got to say, look, Justin Herbert's really talented. Justin Herbert's got to win that game. I'm sorry. Make a play. Do something. Stem the tide. Like, I'm not saying he's the chief reason they lost that game. He's not. I think it was the coaching and their defense fell apart. But second half of that game, he's like 10 of 19, not a ton of yardage. Look, when you blow a lead like that, it's the whole team. It's coach, it's all of it. But yeah, the Chargers, and now they're not even going to fire Staley. Like, they're going to run forward with this. I don't care who they bring in as their offensive coordinator, whoever it is. Look, Lombardi wasn't the one who played the starters in Week 18, who watched his defense give up 31 points in 31 minutes. That's Staley. All these situational gas they have, that's all on Brendan Staley. So good luck to the Chargers moving forward.
The other games from the AFC, you had the Bills, who were favored by nearly 2 full touchdowns to take down the Dolphins. Well, they ended up only winning by 3, and if not for some absolutely horrific clock management, maybe that game ends even a little bit differently between Miami and Buffalo. Then in the nightcap on Sunday, the Bengals barely beat a Ravens team. They were favored by 8 or 8.5 points over. And again, if not for some horrible clock mismanagement at the end of the game, maybe that one ends up a little bit differently favoring the Ravens over the Bengals. So, Matt, I'll ask you a question that I asked Dan earlier on this hour. After those games on Sunday, has your confidence in the Bills and or the Bengals wavered at all after a couple of close calls?
My opinions on those teams haven't really changed. I think the Bengals are better than the Bills right now. I still feel that way. I expected that Bengals-Ravens game to be a bit of a rock fight. I think that's what it was. Now, it was closer than I thought it would be, to be honest. I thought, the Bengals would find a way to pull away in the fourth quarter where they did. That game came right down to it, even with a 98-yard scoop and score and one of the dumbest plays I've ever seen in my life. Tyler Huntley, did he think his arms were 9 feet long? Like, I don't know what he was doing. But look, I think the Bengals, my biggest concern with them is their offensive line. I mean, you're now down both tackles and a guard. I mean, you are to a point here where you're playing with second stringers. Now, the good news is for them, they're about to play a team that does not have a pass rush. Miller's out for the year. The Bills, unless they blitz Miami, couldn't get any pressure. Miami can't block anybody. I mean, Armstead played at left tackle, but Armstead is all kinds of compromised. If the Dolphins could have caught passes and ran a clock like a normal team, they would have won that game. I mean, they absolutely would have won that game. So, Buffalo, I had the same concerns with them I had going in. Their pass defense hasn't been good for over a month and a half now. It was not good. Even though you look at the box score and see Thompson's numbers, if the Dolphins catch a couple of those passes they were wide open for, it's a totally different box score. And the Bills offensively, it just feels like there is no plan. It's just bombs away down the field. And if that doesn't work, there's no left hand. I think the Bills, frankly, if they can't get to Burrow on Sunday, maybe they can, that saves them. But if they can't, I think the Bills are in for a long afternoon in that game.
Our guest is Matt Verderame of FanSided. He joins us weekly here on 580 Sports Talk to talk all things NFL. You can find his work at FanSided, including the Stacking the Box column and podcast. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Looking at the NFC action, it was tighter for longer than most expected, but eventually the San Francisco 49ers pulled away from the Seattle Seahawks on Saturday in a 41-23 victory. Brock Purdy had another impressive game, but my theory is that Brock Purdy hasn't yet seen a defense to make it hard on him for 4 quarters. Is that the secret sauce? Is that how you beat the 49ers right now, is make it hard on Brock Purdy?
Yeah, I think, look, it's easier said than done, but absolutely. Purdy's not faced one adverse situation since he's come in. They've blown out everybody they face except for the Raiders, and the Raiders can't stop anybody. So, none of this has ever been hard for him. I mean, even that Seattle game, he was able to just sit in the pocket all day long, throw the ball. I think the plan for Dallas has got to be just get in his face, whatever it takes. And Dallas can do that. That is one thing with the Cowboys. With Parsons and Lawrence and Armstrong, I mean, they can get after the quarterback. And if they can do it, it's going to be a very interesting game. Because, look, the Niners have a lot of weapons, and everybody talks about them constantly. The Niners do not have a prolific passing attack. Like, if you really look at the 49ers, week in and week out, the only guy who went over 1,000 yards in that team is Brandon Ayuk. I mean, that's it. Now Samuel missed some time. Kittle missed a couple of games, although I don't think he would have gone over 100 yards anyway unless he went nuts in those games he missed. But they're not a team that's going to beat you with the deep ball. They're not. I think you're eventually going to see a defense, and maybe it's on Sunday, that just says, look, we're going to create chaos for him one way or the other, and we're going to choke off all these intermediate routes, and if he's going to beat us, it's going to be him throwing the ball 50 yards down the field. And I'm curious to see what happens, because the other side of it with the Niners, they have a great defense, and I'm not casting any aspersions on them, but one thing about the Niners, you can throw the ball on San Francisco's corners. And so is Dallas a team that can exploit that? I don't know. I think the big teams in the AFC can all do it. Can the Niners be exposed by Dallas on the outside? We're going to find out here in a week.
How much money did Daniel Jones make for himself on Sunday in beating the Minnesota Vikings?
At least enough to buy a Mazda. I think he's going to make some pretty good money off that. I mean, at this point, would you really be shocked if he gets like a 4-year deal for, I don't know, $30 million a year, something like that?
That's the going rate, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he's going to get paid. He's not prolific. Like, he's not a guy who's going to really light you up. Unless you're Minnesota, in which case, Minnesota in that game on Sunday, I couldn't help but think about it. I was like, if any of these teams with high-powered offense, Philly, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Kansas City, if they played Minnesota in a have-to-have-it type situation, how many points would they score? 60? I mean, there are times in that game where the Giants would throw like just a regular, like a little slant or a crosser. There would be nobody in the picture. Like, there's nobody from Minnesota anywhere near him. Look, I think Jones played a very good game, obviously, 379 total yards. To beat Philadelphia, he's going to have to make more plays in tighter windows when they're throwing the ball. I mean, obviously, they're going to want to run it. And they will to some degree, but there's going to be the inevitable 3rd and 8, 2nd and 10. I'll say this fun little fact that I unearthed while I was doing my column. Including Sunday's win over Minnesota, Jones has had 7 games this year where he's rushed at least 10 times. The Giants are undefeated in those games. So is it a game where the Giants try to do some designed runs with him, use him to keep Barkley fresh, and between the two of them, carry the ball 30, 35 times? I think that's a recipe for success. And then can Jones make a couple throws to Richie James and to Darius Slayton and to Isaiah Hodgins? Can he get it done?
Going to be, I'm sure, really, really fun to talk about this all off season. So I'll just go ahead and get to it now. Did we watch Tom Brady's last game last night, or is he playing somewhere else next year?
You know, not to be dismissive of it, because he's the greatest player I've ever seen, and I think probably in NFL history, certainly at the quarterback position. I don't know that I even really am that overstung about it either way. Like, if he goes back and plays, I can't imagine it's Tampa. I think, everybody thinks if he comes back and he plays, the Raiders are the leader in the clubhouse, maybe Miami, depending on Tua's health. I mean, let's say he goes plays for the Raiders. Okay. Like, what are they in the AFC? A borderline playoff team? I don't know. I mean, maybe they fight with the Chargers for second place. They still have no defense. They still have a bad offensive line.
Tampa Bay still got a better roster, right?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, after watching Tampa, there's no way he's going back to that team. He's going to go back and play for Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich. I mean, that's impossible how badly that team was coached this year. I think he's just kind of done with it. But yeah, you look at it and say, where, if the Niners calling his hometown team, but I feel like at this point it's Purdy or it's Lance. Like, I don't know that they're gonna sit down both of them or trade both of them. I don't think so. So, I think I always kind of looked at the Giants, like maybe them if Daniel Jones falls off. Jones has played well enough now; they're compelled to keep him. So, it's like Tennessee. I mean, is Brady going to go play for Tennessee? I don't think so. So, it's just look. I think he probably goes and plays somewhere next year. My leader in the clubhouse, like everybody else in the league, probably the Raiders. But I just don't think it matters. Like, even with him, they're not a divisional round team in the AFC. They're just not.
We're chatting with Matt Verderame of Fansided.com. He joins us usually on Mondays, this week on Tuesday, to talk all things NFL here on 580 Sports Talk. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matt Verderame, and of course, all of his great work can be found at Fansided.com. All right, Matt, just a couple more quick ones, and we'll let you go here today. First one, on the coaching front, give us one bold prediction for the coaching carousel, either a team that's going to, you think, make a terrible hire, where Sean Payton's going to end up. Just give us your number one bold prediction for the coaching carousel.
My somewhat humorous one is that the Colts somehow interview all 12 of these candidates that they have, and they end up with Jeff Saturday. But there's just a part of me that says like that, Irsay would love to do that, but I just don't think that. Like, I think if it was just like if Irsay was the only person in the room, I feel like that would happen. But I feel like Ballard is just going to throw himself in front of the door before that happens. So I guess my bold prediction was I don't think Payton's going to take a job this offseason. I think he's going to stay where he is, because when you look at these jobs, the Chargers would have been really intriguing. He lives in Southern California. Herbert, but that job's now not open. He's not going there to be a coordinator. And I don't know if the Chargers would have paid him anyway, but I think he would have been interested. The Cowboys would have been fascinating if they had lost yesterday. They don't. So McCarthy's safe. These other jobs, like I don't see. Are the Saints going to let him go to Carolina? Like, that's probably the best opening, but I don't know if the Saints would let him do that. I don't think he's going back to the Saints. The Saints are a mess right now. They've said Allen's going to be back. And then the other three jobs, I mean, Arizona's a terrible job. And Bidwell's not going to pay enough to get Peyton in there. The Broncos would pay enough for Peyton. The question is, does he want to go to Denver, where he's not going to win the division for years on end, and he has no idea if he can resuscitate Russell Wilson. And then they wouldn't even have a first-round pick. They had traded to get him. And then Houston's probably the most interesting one. But that organization's such a disaster. I just think Peyton says, you know what? I'll wait another year. I'll collect a check from Fox. I'll collect a check from the Saints, and I'll wait and see.
All right, Matt, last one I've got for you, building off of what Dan asked you about Tom Brady. Last year was a pretty insane year, all things considered, for the quarterback market, re-signings, guys returning, etc.
Yep.
This year, you've got Rodgers questioning, Brady questioning. Who knows what San Francisco is going to do with Lance and Purdy? Are you expecting a quieter quarterback offseason or another crazy one?
No, I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I mean, Garoppolo's gone out of San Francisco, so he'll be on the move. Carr's going to be on the move. I think Carr and the Jets make a ton of sense. I think Tannehill, there's a chance he's on the move. I think the Titans might make a change there, depending upon how they feel the market might shake out. Look, I think you're going to see movement in the draft because I think the Colts are going to try to get up and get a young quarterback. They want to get off this veteran carousel, but that might mean that Matt Ryan's on the move. Now, does he get a starting job anywhere? I don't know. Probably not, but he's probably on the move. Carson Wentz on the move. So you're going to have him, does he get a job? Baker Mayfield, does he get a starting job? Some of these guys will compete for starting jobs. Some of them are probably going to have to accept their fate as a backup. But you're going to see, obviously Brady, we just talked about him. He's going to be out there. And then I think the big ones, I do not pretend to know what's going on inside Aaron Rodgers' head. I don't want to get in there. I don't know. I think they're going to have a really hard time moving that salary. And I think in the end, the best bet is he's just back in Green Bay. I think there's a real chance, almost better than not, that Lamar Jackson gets traded. I think that's coming. It's such a disconnect at this point. I think they'll try to negotiate a long-term deal, but if they don't, they're going to have to tag him at $45.2 million. That's the biggest tag in NFL history. And if they feel like they can't get a long-term deal done, I think it's time to move. And it's probably, hey, look, give me 3 first-round picks. That's the price. And they're going to find somebody. They're going to find some team out there, maybe the Jets if they don't go after Carr, that say, you know what? Okay, we'll meet that price. I think that is the one to watch, in my opinion.
Man, can you imagine moving that guy? That would be absolutely crazy. Matt Verderame covers the NFL better than anybody over at fansided.com. Find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Go check out the Stacking the Box column at Fansided every Monday. Matt joins us every week here on 580 Sports Talk to talk all things NFL. As always, Matt, appreciate the time. We will talk to you coming up next Monday once the championship games are set.
Sounds good. Take care.
That is Matt Verderame from fansided.com. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Oh, we've got a lot of Sunflower Showdown to talk about. That's all coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. go. 580 Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday. Hour number 2 going up here on the Sports Voice of Kansas and on YouTube. Brendan Dworzinski here with you. Appreciate you for joining us today on the show. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero, your crew. Dan, getting ready to head out to Manhattan for the Sunflower Showdown tonight. And we're going to be talking plenty of Sunflower Showdown over the course of this hour. I'll be breaking down the game with you here in just a matter of moments. We'll also have Michael Swain join us later on this hour. Our KU Insider, our Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery. If you're not headed to the game tonight, and it's an early tip, better get on your way. If you live here in Topeka, if you live anywhere east, north, due south, whatever it might be, probably going to want to hurry because it is going to be busy. It is going to be crowded. In fact, I already saw from our guy Ryan Gilbert over at Go Power Cat pictures on Twitter of the line for students to get in, wrapping all the way around Bramlage Coliseum. It's going to be an awesome environment tonight. So if you aren't going to the game and you're not leaving already, but you need somewhere to go watch it, 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence, great place to do so. Great beer selection, awesome food. You really want to celebrate the night. You're a KU fan, order the bill self. It's the absolute best. But that's 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence at the corner of Clinton Parkway and Cassold. And again, Michael Swain will join us for Jayhawk Weekly later on this hour to preview the matchup. And of course, equal time and all that, just messing around. Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us coming up tomorrow for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up for the post-game reaction to tonight's Sunflower Showdown. Looking forward to that one coming up tomorrow. And again, looking forward to the game coming up tonight. We've also got What Is Wrong With You coming up this hour as well. 2 new stories. Short week of What Is Wrong With You this week. Obviously, we were off yesterday. Things are going to get a little bit hectic at the end of the week because the Topeka Invitational Tournament is here. Yes, the second longest running high school basketball tournament in the state of Kansas. It is back again from the Charger Dome at Topeka West this year. We will have coverage of it on Thursday and Friday, including triple header coverage starting on Thursday afternoon. We're only going to have a short edition of Sports Talk that day, and then myself and the coach Larry Latimer will be on the call, and our whole crew is excited to bring you the TIT this week. So, abbreviated week of What Is Wrong With You as well. But we will get you our new What Is Wrong With You. Dan and I both will get you that coming up here in just a little bit. As always, you are welcome to chime in on the show as well. The Big O Tires text line is wide open to you at all times. 785-272-9429. That's 785-272-WIBW. Let us know your thoughts on anything we're talking about. NFL Wildcard Weekend, we talked all about it last hour, just the two of us, as well as Matt Verderame of Fansided.com. Let us know your thoughts on the Sunflower Showdown as well. You can do the same on YouTube. We are live streaming the show on YouTube. Our handle, our channel, Sports on 580 WIBW. Go to youtube.com, search for that. Sports on 580 WIBW. You will find our channel. That is where all of our live videos are for the show, all of our post-game recaps. Dan's going to have a post-game recap video for you from Bramlage Coliseum tonight. Go subscribe if you haven't yet. It's free. All of our videos will then pop up on your home screen. That channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. And let's get right into it with the coverage of the Sunflower Showdown coming up tonight. A couple of comments in already from the YouTube comments. We'll get to that in particular first. One from Mark that says, not sure who will win between KU and K-State, but hope it is a good game and close. So we'll get to a little bit more on the back half of Mark's comment there in just a second. Also, David, shout out to David checking in on the show stream as well. He says KU will win tonight. For those of you who are intrigued by the gambling side of things, maybe you think, oh, I'd like to put a shekel or two down on this game. KU right now over at FanDuel is favored by 1.5. That sounds right to me. That sounds right. So obviously Vegas is expecting this to be a close game. I also expect this to be a close game tonight. And if you think, okay, K-State gets the benefit of a couple points because they're playing at home, this sounds about right. 1.5 for KU to come away with a close win. I do think this is going to be a close game. I do think this is going to be a competitive game. And I think there's a handful of different matchups that we're going to all be focusing on. And I think there's a handful of just trends for the game and themes for the game that we are going to be focusing on. Number one, I'll start with the individual matchups here. The two that jump off the page immediately, and I'll make sure to bring this up to Michael Swain coming up here in just a little bit, but the ones that pop up immediately for me, the point guard battle, obviously, Marquise Noel versus DeJuan Harris. K-State versus KU. And then your wing options, Keontae Johnson versus Kevin McCullough. Now, that matchup first, Keontae's obviously a better offensive threat right now for K-State than Kevin McCullough is on the KU side of things. But defensively, when K-State is on offense, their side of the court, their ball, Kevin McCullough, I imagine, is going to be matched up plenty on Keontae Johnson, maybe the most dynamic player for K-State, in a way that's at least different than the way Marquise Noel is dynamic for this K-State team. I think that's going to be fascinating. Defensively, I think KU has the chutzpah, if you will, to keep up with those guys that have been really good scorers over the course of the season so far. The one thing for KU is they have got to be careful about foul trouble. There have been a couple of games so far this season, Big 12 play and otherwise, in which either McCullough or Harris has gotten into some early foul trouble. I think those two dudes have the ability, the wherewithal, the intensity to, I don't want to say stop, but to limit or at least contend competitively with Noel and Johnson throughout the duration of the game. But, for example, you take DeJuan Harris off the floor, Bobby Pettiford goes in, has to play 12 minutes in the first half, has to play 20-ish minutes for the game, whatever it ends up being. I like Bobby Pettiford. I think Bobby Pettiford has some nice traits defensively. I like the little bit of a change of pace he can bring to the offensive side. Okay, you can even go two small guards with him and Harris out there at the same time. But that is a much more appealing matchup if you are Marquise Noel, someone who likes to challenge challenge defenses with difficult shots sometimes. And we know he's got shot-making ability from all over the court. We've seen the long range. We've seen the contested jumpers. We know he's got that ability, but you'd much rather try to make those shots against Bobby Pettiford than you would against DeJuan Harris Jr. So that is why, in terms of foul trouble, KU has got to be especially careful. And I think DeJuan Harris in particular, you have to have on the floor as much as possible in this game. I'm not saying I'm terrified of him getting in foul trouble. I don't believe, or at least I wouldn't expect, that is going to be an obvious thing early in this game. Oh no, DeJuan's in foul trouble. Everything's hitting a fan at this point. But he is the straw that stirs the drink for this KU team. He doesn't have to score to make a major impact. There's a reason he was on the floor for 39 of 40 minutes against Iowa State this weekend, despite the fact that he didn't score a single point. And part of that is because, well, the bench wasn't scoring either, so you might as well keep Harris on the floor. But nonetheless, he is the one that makes things go offensively and defensively for this KU team because he is a very good on-ball defender and even an off-ball defender, and he is the number one and number two and number three facilitator for this KU offense. You take him off the floor, Marquise Noel is going to have a much more open night. I think open is probably a fair word for it. He's going to have a lot more opportunity to score, a lot more opportunity to make plays, especially on the offensive end. The Johnson matchup is a little bit more interesting to me. I think McCullough versus Johnson is going to be fascinating. I think that is going to be a great head-to-head to watch. If McCullough's not on the floor, either because he continues to shoot the ball from the floor or because he gets in some foul trouble defensively, whatever the reason might be, I think KU can come up with more ways to try to slow him down. I think KU will be able to not necessarily exploit matchups, but will be able to find matchups that will more readily give them a chance against one of the most dynamic offensive players in the Big 12 in Keontae Johnson. So if I'm KU and I'm looking at those two matchups in particular, Harris is the most important one on Marquise Noel, but I think McCullough on Johnson has the potential to be one of those we look back on at the end of the year or look back on going into the next game 2 weeks from tonight when these two teams play at Allen Fieldhouse. We say, wow, that's the matchup that totally changed the game. Wow, I can't wait to see those two go head-to-head again. The other matchup that I'm the most interested in for this matchup is going to be in the post because neither of these two squads are throwing traditional back-to-the-basket, dominant, rim-protecting big men, right? Like, your post guys for K-State, Naquan Tomlin, and especially Bebe Iziola, they're not those kinds of guys. And on the KU side, we know that KJ Adams isn't that kind of guy either. Now, you understand where my biases lie with this matchup. I'm just looking forward to a good game. I've got no beef with the purple team. I hope I've made that clear over time. I am rocking from our friends at Home Field Apparel, though, the KU sweatshirt today, obviously. I think KJ Adams has been sensational this year, and I think most people believe that as well. He has played so well. It's now 10 or 11 games in a row in which he's scored in double figures. He's facilitating the ball well. He's been rebounding well. He's a very good defender. There's a reason he was on the floor at the end of the national championship game. He has done everything, and I think we are at a point personally where right now he is the second most indispensable player that KU has, both in terms of the depth behind him and also what he's offering on the court right now. So I, on one end, really like the matchup with KJ Adams offensively going against Kansas State, that short roll offense that KU has been running that they have found so much success with. That's been one of their most successful actions on the offensive end over the course of the season. I think that's a great matchup, KJ, just to be blunt about it. Now, the flip side of that is defensively, like KJ Adams' defensive effort, like the ability he shows, like the intensity he shows. But K-State's got a couple of guys who can really put up points down low, or at least can make things difficult for you down low. If Eziola is playing well, if Tomlin is playing well, and we've seen a couple games this year where Tomlin has looked really good, that could, again, pose some problems for KJ in this game. So that's the other matchup. It's not necessarily 1-for-1 like Harris versus Noel or like McCullough versus Johnson is, I think. But you do get, I think, an interesting clash of styles and an interesting couple of body types, really, that you're going to see banging down low in the post tonight. So those are the three matchups, either 1-for-1 or just in general, that I'm most looking forward to and I'm going to be keeping my eye on throughout the game tonight. The other thing, I talked about themes that we need to pay attention to in this game. There's a couple of them. And I think they're pretty basic, but they are also going to dictate how this game unfolds. I'll start with the visitors. I'll start with KU. You have to be efficient scoring the ball. And not in the sense that, oh, wow, no duh, you want to shoot 50% or better from the floor because you need points to win the game. Yeah, no duh, that's obvious. But we have seen KU in the last two games, especially 2 games ago against Oklahoma, struggle to shoot the ball and struggle to make shots that they should be making. Even against Iowa State, KU did not shoot the 3-ball well in that game at all. Against Oklahoma, it was shots at the rim. It was 21 blown layups and shots at the rim in that game that completely changed the complexion of that one and gave Oklahoma a really good chance going into the waning moments of that game. And then again, against Iowa State, Grady Dick was awesome. Iowa State, I don't know what the exact plan was for them to try to guard Grady Dick. Well, they didn't succeed at doing it because they let him get a ton of open shots in that game. He tore apart that Iowa State defense to the tune of 5 of 9 from 3-point range. The rest of KU as a group made one. They made 1 3 the entire game outside of Grady Dick. So KU's got to be able to shoot the ball efficiently. K-State's going to run. K-State's going to put pressure on you. You've got to be able to make the easy shots. KU's going to have to work in this game just like K-State is going to have to work in this game. So when you get opportunities in the post, when you get clean looks, whether they're from 2, whether they're from 3, you've got to be able to make it because there are going to be more often than not contested looks, difficult times getting to the basket that are hard enough to score on in general. So KU has got to get back to a place of efficiency. That starts with Jalen Wilson. We talked about that last week with Michael Swain here on the show during Jayhawk Weekly. How Jay Will has not been shooting the ball efficiently really since the start of Big 12 play. Hell, even before the start of Big 12 play, save for the game against Harvard right before Christmas. So you've got to be able to score efficiently. Jalen Wilson, can you go 7 of 14 instead of 5 of 14? Can you get a game that's 6 of 10 instead of 3 for 10 with a bunch of free throws, and that's how you get your points? I'm not saying it's bad to score in other ways. I'm not saying it's bad to get to the free throw line, but you've got to be efficient from the line, or from the field, excuse me. The other theme that I'm paying attention to on the K-State side, you cannot be careless with the ball. You cannot give the ball away to the degree that you gave the ball away against TCU. TCU, I thought, was the better team on Saturday than K-State was. And look, that happens. This is Big 12 basketball. Sometimes you just run off the floor. Sometimes the other team just plays better than you. It is a hard league. I don't know that K-State was looking ahead of TCU for this KU game. I know we talked about that on Friday's show. There's certainly an element of that is possible. I just think TCU was a team on a mission. They got out in transition. They played through Eddie Lampkin for a lot of the first half, and it was just hard for K-State to keep up because they did not shoot the ball well in that game. K-State's numbers throughout that game. From the floor, 43%, not awful, not great. 6 of 21 from 3, and they only got to the free throw line 7 times. TCU got to the line 19 times. They didn't shoot the ball well from 3, but they got out in transition. They ran, and they turned K-State over. K-State committed 10 more turnovers than TCU did in their game on Saturday. That's just not going to cut it, especially against another team that gets out in transition really well like the Kansas Jayhawks do. If K-State is that careless with the ball again, they're toast in this game. Now, I say that assuming they will not be that bad with ball security in this game. I'm sure in the 48 plus hours, more than 48 hours, 72 at this point, since playing against TCU, K-State has gotten a lot of ball security drilled into them. I guess that's the way to put it. They have focused a lot on that, knowing we cannot turn the ball over like that if we want to win this rivalry game. So KU's got to be efficient, especially around the rim and with open looks from three. K-State, you've got to value possession. You cannot let KU get out and run because Harris, Wilson, Adams, even McCullough and Dick, especially Dick when you talk about the three-point line. When KU gets in transition, really hard to stop. Just like TCU was. You cannot be careless with the possession in this game if you are Kansas State. Did want to mention one thing from our guy Vance in the YouTube comments. Bramlage is going to be absolutely crazy. Oh, yeah, there is no doubt about that. That crowd tonight, whether you're going to be a part of it, you're watching on TV, you know people who are there, you're thinking about the students, whatever, that is going to be an awesome environment tonight. Probably filled with a lot of chanting. I've intentionally not said a whole lot about what Jerome Tang said yesterday. I happen to agree with him. I also, at the same time, don't really care what other fan bases do. Like, if your whole thing is you hate KU more than you love K-State, well, hey, more power to you. That doesn't really affect me. If you agree with Jerome Tang that maybe some people spend too much focus on the rivalry and should spend more energy just caring about your own team, hey, that's fine too. I happen to agree with him, but I just think it's consistent messaging with what he's been saying ever since he took the job about giving this program to the students, making this your program, to the alumni. I think it's awesome. I think Jerome Tang has been tremendous in pretty much every single facet since taking over at K-State. And I'm frankly not really all that concerned with getting into the petty stuff about rent-free or any of that other nonsense. I'm just looking forward to a good game. I've got KU. We're going to talk about it a little bit more coming up later on in the hour with Michael Swain and Jayhawk Weekly. But first, we've got to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll come back. We'll play today's What Is Wrong With You. That's coming up on 580 WIBW. Championship tournament coming up in just a couple of weeks. Dane, I'll go first for our stories today, and we're going to Breezewood, Pennsylvania, and some reporting from WTAJ-TV in Pennsylvania. It states that a trio of men from New York are behind bars after police said they tried to hide 83 pounds of marijuana behind a dumpster after one of the men in the group called 911. State troopers out of Bedford responded to a 911 hang-up call at the Marathon gas station on the Lincoln Highway in Breezewood back on January 13th. One of the men, later discovered to be 30-year-old Psyche Wang of Flushing, New York, allegedly called 911 and said there were people in his car with marijuana and he wanted them to get out, but they refused. Upon arrival, troopers said that two men, 29-year-old Ji-Ming Yang and 29-year-old Dae-Hoo Yu, both from Flushing, New York, were seen standing near duffel bags in the parking lot of the marathon. The men reportedly gave troopers permission to search their duffel bag. That was dumb. And marijuana in vacuum-sealed bags was found. Troopers then found 5 trash bags hidden behind a dumpster that contained 83 pounds of marijuana, an estimated street value of over $300,000. Yang, the driver, was contacted and agreed to meet with troopers at their barracks back in Bedford. After reportedly getting conflicting stories from all 3 men, a search warrant was approved for Yang's car. The search warrant resulted in roughly $120,000 in counterfeit money being found, again, in multiple duffel bags. Yang was charged with forgery and possession with intent to deliver. Yu and Wang were charged with possession and intent to deliver. All 3 men are in prison currently in lieu of $100,000 bond.
They called the cops on themselves. Well, one guy called the cops on the whole operation.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe he had some beef with what was going on, and he said, all right, I'm done with this. I'm done with you guys. Get out of my car.
What could have him so annoyed with the people he was traveling with that he decided he needed to call the police and dime out a whole elaborate counterfeit money and marijuana operation? Like, the music on the aux cord could not have been that bad. Like, I get it. Like, oh my God, Jiaming is playing sea shanties again. I want to strangle him. I do not want to be in a car with these people anymore.
Why did you turn off Playboy Cardi? I have no idea.
Maybe one of them's dropping heat. Like, I don't understand. Like, I've been on some car trips that have been a lot of fun. I haven't had the misfortune of being on a long car ride that's been like miserable.
Yeah.
Or like traveling with people and it's like a bad time. Like the music's bad or it stinks or whatever it is. But I can only imagine that's what was going on there. And even still, don't generally call the police on your own illegal operation would be a good rule of thumb, I would think, for the successful criminal.
Yeah, there's the thing. Like, okay, you want these guys to get out. You don't know how to get rid of them. Your trip has been a disaster, whatever. You've got to have the self-awareness to know, what if they come search my truck? Maybe that won't end well for me. Maybe I should approach this differently. However, these gentlemen did not think about that, and now they're all in jail.
Now, maybe he just thought, well, they're not going to search they're not going to give me static. I called the police.
I don't have those duffel bags. I just have the counterfeit money, not the actual weed. I'm fine.
I'm the good guy here.
Right.
I called the cops. For mine, we go to Miami-Dade County, Florida, and we meet somebody else narking on himself. 19-year-old Joshua Reed, who is out on bond for grand theft auto in Broward County and has a pending case in Palm Beach County. Well, he went on another crime spree with a crew and had a pretrial release GPS ankle-worn bracelet on as he was doing these crimes. Sergeant Fernando Bosch of the South Miami Police Department says, we were able to track this guy who is responsible for 14 cases. Detectives questioned Reed at the North Miami Police Department on Thursday, and he denied all of it. In South Miami, surveillance video recorded on January 7th shows Reed and his crew outside of a home. One thief used a rock and a boulder to try and break a hurricane impact-resistant glass door. Probably not a thing you'd encounter in Kansas, but in Florida, pretty common, I would bet. As a family slept inside, detectives said the thieves found a parked Mercedes-Benz with a key fob inside. Don't leave your keys in your car. And they were trying to get into the keys of a parked Bentley. Their MO is to wear dark-colored clothing and break into homes in search of key fobs for luxury cars. Detectives are searching for Reed's accomplices. Presumably, none of them were wearing GPS tracking devices while they were doing this dirt. Reed is facing 4 counts of burglary of an occupied dwelling, 4 counts of burglary of an unoccupied structure, 2 counts of first-degree grand theft, 2 counts of second-degree grand theft, third-degree grand theft of a vehicle, armed grand theft of a vehicle, and criminal mischief.
See, at this point, if you're the police, you've got to be thinking, let's see how far he takes this. Like,
Right.
Let's see where else he's going to travel to.
Yeah, exactly. Let's keep an eye on him. Let's be close. Make sure like nothing gets destroyed. Nobody starts shooting any guns.
Nobody gets hurt.
Right. But let's just follow this around and kind of see where he'll take us.
Like 72 hours. Kick back. See how many crimes this guy will commit.
Did he forget that he had the GPS ankle bracelet on? Or did he just think, man, they're not going to bother me?
Yeah. Nah, they're not going to be paying attention to me. They got better things to do.
I'm low level. This isn't on all the time.
That's a great question. Like, how would you think you could get away with that? They're following you at all times.
Yeah.
It goes off. It beeps.
Yes.
In their ear, not in yours, if something is going wrong. I don't understand the logic at all. Well, there obviously is no logic.
Yeah, his buddies called him, hey, man, we need to go do some GTA crime. Would you like to join us? And he just said, yeah. And then he remembered probably when he hung up, oh, man, I got this GPS device. I probably shouldn't, but I can't back out on my boys. I gave my word. I got to go. Maybe that's it. That's as good an explanation as any I can come up with.
Man, I wouldn't go, but they said there's a Bentley. I don't know.
Got to be there for my guys.
Man, this dude's real dumb. Now, granted, at 19 years old, I also did a lot of dumb things. Hell, at 28 years old, I do a lot of dumb things. I, however, have never had a court-ordered GPS ankle monitor on.
He thought, Contavious Caldwell-Pope played in NBA games with one of these on. Surely I can go do the thing I am good at, stealing cars.
I am the KCP of stealing cars in South Florida. Wow, these are 2 great stories.
Yes.
Who's your pick for today?
I got to go with the guy who thought he could do dirt with a GPS monitor on his ankle and thought he was going to get away with it. And thought that when the police questioned him about it, he could be like, nah, man, that wasn't me.
Man, these are 2 good stories. This other dude, though, he called 911 while he was pushing 120K counterfeit and 83 pounds of weed.
Like a toddler's worth of weed, yeah.
Also, I don't understand why all those guys were just so willing to talk to the cops.
Right?
Oh, yeah, you can search these bags.
You know,
why would you agree to that?
They must have been really fed up with each other.
Yeah,
like,
I'd rather go to jail.
Take me to jail. I am tired of sharing car space with these guys. Take me to jail. You know what? That might have swayed me back in that the direction of that story.
Because then the driver came back and was like, yes, please, search my car.
Yes.
I just don't. I'm going to go with that one. I'm going to go with tied to the group that is not 19 years old.
Yeah. Grown men, old enough you would think to know better. And they were just so fed up with each other. They're like, please find all this crime that we're doing together. Done with this.
Doesn't matter how old you are, you should still be a good road trip partner. I think that's what that story told us. Is that the pick for today?
That is the pick for today.
All right, we'll stick with that one. That is our winner for the first What Is Wrong With You of the week. We're going to take a time out here. When we come back, Michael Swain of Fog.net joins us for the 23rd Street Brewery Jayhawk Weekly right here on 580 Sports Talk.
Lawrence, Kansas tonight.
It is Sunflower Showdown Tuesday, number 1 for the 22-23 season. And here on 580 Sports Talk, we now welcome in our good friend Michael Swain of Fog.net for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you as always by our good friends at the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence at the corner of Clinton Parkway and Cassold. If you're not going to Manhattan to watch the game tonight, no better place to watch it than at the 23rd Street Brewery. Great brews, great food, and an awesome place to watch any KU or Big 12 game. Again, that's the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. And Michael, first thing I've got for you today, before we get to the excitement, obviously, for tonight's Sunflower Showdown, let's take a look back at Saturday's game. And that was a tough one and a tight one for KU against Iowa State. Did that unfold about the way you thought it would, given the way Iowa State plays, given the close games that KU has played so far? Did that unfold in a fairly predictable way?
I think so. I think you look at, just the Big 12 period. I have a feeling that, KU's going to play, 18 games in the Big 12? I have a feeling probably 15 of them are going to end up being like that, where it's down to the wire. It's going to be which team executes better down the stretch. And thankfully for KU, they've got a pretty darn good coach that can help kind of guide the way. But I think in terms of just a matchup, I thought it was really interesting how there was definitely some give and take. You look at Iowa State, they forced so many turnovers, right? They averaged a turnover rate of 30%, averaged 20 forced turnovers a game. And then KU only turns the ball over 12 times. And I think it was 20% of their possessions they turned the ball over. And I think it's a credit to DeJuan Harris, who, even though he didn't score during the course of the game, he was someone that really controlled the pace. And I think Iowa State went out of their way to make sure that he didn't go berserk from three or be able to really control the game with his scoring. And then you look on the glass, and Iowa State really dominated there. And I think KU did a good job of limiting the production that Iowa State could get off those offensive rebounds, right? Only 6 second chance points off of 13 offensive rebounds. Bill Self will take that. He's not going to like that 13 number, but he's going to love that 6 number and limiting those opportunities, because that's the difference in the game, right? If it's an average offense there, you're expecting probably 13 points instead of 6, and you're looking at KU maybe losing that game. So in terms of the matchup, I think it's just the Big 12 these days, and I think it played out about how you'd expect and how I think just about every other Big 12 game is going to play out this year.
Was that game more of a blueprint for how not to guard Grady Dick than even the previous couple of games were blueprints for how to guard him? Because I know after the game, TJ Otzelberger said, hey, look, we wanted to do these couple of things, and he still got the open looks, etc. But, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, they tried to take him away, face guarding him pretty much for a full 40 minutes, limit his looks entirely. Iowa State didn't do that, and Dick lit them up. Is that essentially how teams are going to have to guard him, seeing how successful OU and OSU were and how unsuccessful Iowa State was at guarding him on the perimeter?
Yeah, I think so. And I think maybe Iowa State, Gabe Kalsher, the guard that was kind of on Grady for most of the game, Gabe's a really good defender. And I think Iowa State probably thought, you want what, let's put our best perimeter defender on Grady and try and get away with not having to have a guy chase him around like he's Steph Curry all game. And I think that you got to give a lot of credit to Grady too here. His movement against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State wasn't great. And I think that maybe getting face guarded, not that it demotivates, but it gets frustrating where you're running around and you got a guy just on you the whole time. And I think that his movement was so much better. It was a lot more sudden and decisive. And I think it makes it really hard for even a really good defender like Gabe Kalsher to stay on him. And I think he was so open early on that I think it was maybe even a little bit of like a what the heck moment in the back of his head, where he starts the game 0-3 and they were all 3 pretty good looks. And then from then on, he goes 7 of 10 from the field and really locks in and plays well. And I'm interested to see what K-State does tonight, because I don't know if they have a perimeter defender on the caliber of Gabe Kalsher who can go one-on-one. And if not, then I think they're going to have to try and face guard. And I'm really interested to see kind of what lessons Grady has learned over kind of the first quarter of Big 12 play to see what he kind of puts it to use.
Michael Swain is our guest. He covers the Kansas Jayhawks for Fog.net. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can find him on Twitter as well, at mswain247, and he joins us every Tuesday for Jayhawk Weekly here on 580 Sports Talk, brought to you by the 23rd Street Brewery. The other individual, Michael, I wanted to ask you about, and we talk about him, it feels like every week at this point, but he has earned that kind of talk, is KJ Adams. And the overall question I've got for him at this point is, how did this happen? How did he go from last year being, spot minutes and occasionally sub in for some energy and some defense to early this year being the starter, but the fan base wasn't really sure how much he would contribute, to now being completely untouchable? I mean, he's one of the most irreplaceable players that KU has, and honestly, next to Harris, might be the most irreplaceable right now. How did we get to this point with KJ Adams?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I could probably talk about it for 20 minutes, so I'll try and give a brief version. Basically, I think it's something where I just think this team has grown around the KJ Adams skill set. Going into the year, right, I think that everyone kind of thought, okay, it's going to be one of the kind of the four centers that gets the minutes, and maybe they go small with KJ Adams a little bit, and then the centers really kind of stunk in the preseason, and Bill Self felt like KJ was the best way to go. But then early in the season, it just didn't look right. And if you watch KU, it was very stagnant at times, and it looked like KJ was trying to figure out where he needs to be. And I think that Bahamas trip really created maybe a sense of urgency for KU to figure things out. And what you've seen since is they figured out that, okay, KJ Adams is, like Bill Self has said, a little bit of a Draymond Green skill set. Get him the ball, not with his back to the basket, not within 2 feet of the rim, with about 7, 8, 9 feet to the rim, and make him make plays, whether it be off the bounce and finishing at the rim, whether it be passing, and whether it be just throwing down lobs. I think that they found this pick and roll scheme where he's able to set screens, kind of roll hard sometimes, but do this soft roll where it puts him in a position now where he can make plays. And I think his passing is an underrated part of his game. I think you look at the athleticism, his ability to slide defensively, but his passing. And I think he maybe hasn't done as much in Big 12 play, but there was kind of that stretch between kind of the Texas Southern game and the Texas Tech game where he had an assist every single game, and most games had 2 or 3. And so I just think overall this team has grown around KJ Adams, and you've seen this team really figure out how to get him in a position where he can have success. And I think that having players like Jalen Wilson, Kevin McCullough, Juwan Harris on the perimeter, guys that you need to attack, you can't give them space on the perimeter because they'll drive. And all of a sudden what that's created is a guy that can take advantage of that space on the interior in KJ. He's more mobile than David or Udoka, who need the ball kind of within 2 feet of the basket. He can get it in space and make plays. I think that's the biggest development we've seen here, is him kind of turning into what might be an NBA small ball 5 or really even a 4, but in college, really making him the centerpiece of kind of the offense without being someone that's going to put up 15 shots.
How do you feel KJ matches up against the big guys for K-State, who I think have played mostly well for the most part of this season? When you look at Naquan Tomlin, one of the transfers, Bebe Eziola, who's another transfer for this K-State team, they don't have a traditional post presence either at this point. I think that's still something K-State's trying to figure out. How do you think KJ matches up against those guys?
So I think it's very similar to what you saw maybe on Saturday with Osen of Iowa State. And you look at the frames, right? And Tomlin is someone, 6'10", 210 pounds. He's not really like an Eddie Lampkin from TCU. He's someone that is more lean, and I think that maybe fits with KJ a little bit more because KJ is going to have the athleticism to slide and move with him and make sure he's sticking to him. Where if you're going up against someone like Robert Jones from Iowa State or Eddie Lampkin, they've got kind of a physicality that might be able to give KJ some troubles in the post and on the offensive glass. So I think for me, the one thing I'm maybe a little bit worried about is some of the lobs that you see K-State run in terms of the screens and the plays that they run. Like, does KJ have the spatial awareness defensively and the reaction athletically to stop some of those lob plays? I would lean yes, but I don't think it's something you've seen teams try and attack him with so far. And so I think you'll probably see a little bit of a similar scheme to what KU did against Osen on Saturday, and even going back to kind of Cisse and Boone from Oklahoma State. All those guys have very similar frames. And so I wonder if KU is going to double the post. I don't think they will, because you've got Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel on the perimeter, 2 guys that can really make you pay if you give them space and have slow rotations. So I think it's a big game for KJ. And I think this is one of those where if KJ Adams comes out and plays like he has the last 3 weeks, I think he's got a really good shot to win. And if he starts to struggle, it's going to be tough because K-State's really, really good on the offensive glass.
Michael Swain is our guest. He covers the Kansas Jayhawks for Fog.net. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can also find him on Twitter at mswain247, and he joins us every single Tuesday for our 23rd Street Brewery Jayhawk Weekly here on 580 Sports Talk. On the defensive side of things, on the perimeter for KU, obviously K-State's had 2 guys who have been playing phenomenally offensively so far this year, in Marquise Noel and in Keontae Johnson. To me, that screams Juwan Harris on Noel and Kevin McCullough on Johnson as your main defensive matchups going into this game. Do you see that the same way? And how good are those 2 Jayhawks going to have to be to slow down one of the best scoring threats in the Big 12?
I think really good. I think really good. And I totally agree. I was kind of thinking about this earlier this morning. Keontae's size and physicality makes me think, I wonder if someone like Jalen Wilson could be a good matchup. But then I wonder about the athleticism that Keontae shows and his bounce and his first step. And I just think you put Kevin McCullough on there and you deal with maybe him getting out-muscled once or twice over the course of the game rather than putting Jalen on him where maybe you risk him getting beaten off the dribble, which then puts you in a really tough position in terms of rotations. So I think that's a tough matchup. I think DeJuan Harris is going to have his way with Marquise Noel. Now, what you can't have happen is what happened to DeJuan Harris last year against Nigel Pack, where Nigel Pack goes berserk from three in the perimeter in the first half, and it helps K-State open up that double-digit lead at the half. So I think it's one of those where DeJuan's going to have to come out with intensity, not get in foul trouble. I think we've seen that more this season where maybe DeJuan's been a little eager at times and wants to take over a game defensively when maybe it creates a situation where he picks up an early foul and then has to be a little more, not timid, but conscious of what he's doing. So I think for me, those two guys, Kevin McCullough, DeJuan Harris, they have to have really, really good defensive games and then KJ Adams behind them. And honestly, if those three guys have A games or even B plus games, this is the type of game where I think KU should be able to get out with the win, which I think all things considered, you take because K-State's a really good team and Brownridge is going to be rocking tonight.
How badly does KU need production off the bench? And I'm specifically thinking about offensive production in this case. You look back at the game against Iowa State, KU had 2 bench points. Hell, they only had 10 points total that didn't come from Adams, Dick, or Wilson in the win. But you don't have a ton of guys right now on the bench you can look to and say, yeah, that's instant offense. That's a spark you can bring in and can get you 4, 6, 8 quick points. Yesufu is not that guy right now. I don't think they're asking that of Pettiford, but he's not really that guy. And whatever the big man rotation is, Clements, I guess, did that against Oklahoma, but you don't necessarily believe that'll happen constantly. Zuby hasn't been that guy to this point. We haven't seen Uday in forever. How badly does KU need production off the bench? And that's a point for the entire rest of the season, but also for this game tonight.
Oh, terribly. They need it bad. And I think that's a big issue. And it's so weird because it feels like how many seasons in a row now where we've talked about, man, KU really just doesn't get much from its bench. Obviously, Remy last year, late in the season, but he was gone for so long. So I think this year you're looking at guys and just, Bobby Pettiford hasn't really done much the last 2 games, and they're home games. And you think that those are situations where maybe someone like him would thrive. And he's been better in those road games, right? Texas Tech and West Virginia, he was more productive. So maybe the road environment helps him. But I think Joseph Yesufu has been a little disappointing this year. I think he's the same player you saw last year. Not sure how much he offers you offensively, and defensively, he's just not great either. And then, you go down the list, right? MJ Rice really isn't playing that much. He missed practice because of his back spasms and has been kind of in and out. And then you go down to the big men, right? And it's Zach Clements. Great, he's going to score some points, but how many points is he going to allow you on the defensive end, right? You saw that against Oklahoma where he scores double digits, but probably allowed double digits in terms of his defensive ability. And so then you go to Zuby, and Zuby offers some energy off the glass and in terms of setting screens. He gets lost defensively at times. And so I think this is one of those where, Bill Self kind of has his money made out for him if he can get some production out of these guys, just because right now it doesn't look like there's just much there. And there's not that ace in the hole like you had last year with Remy Martin down the stretch. So I think it's just game in and game out. Who are the guys that can give you 10 to 15 minutes and maybe give you some production? I look at Bobby Pettiford probably being the long-term solution to that, but he's still a sophomore, and he really didn't play that much last year either. So he's definitely still growing into this role as well. So I think game in and game out, it's kind of just roll the dice in the first half, see who gives you good minutes, and then put them out there for 2-3 minutes in the second half and try and buy the starters a few minutes.
Last thing I've got for you, Michael, and you mentioned this just a few moments ago, that Bramlage Coliseum is going to be off the rails in all likelihood coming up on Tuesday night, and I know you'll be there covering this game. And for anyone who wants to check out Michael's coverage of the game, again, go check out fog.net, and it's a part of the 24/7 Sports Network. But this is the first Sunflower Showdown matchup that has really mattered in 4 years. And the one in Lawrence that year, yeah, it mattered, but KU's chances in the Big 12 race were pretty slim at that point. The game in Manhattan 4 years ago, we all remember Cartier-Jara's big dunk. The place went nuts. They run on the floor, all that. This is the first time this rivalry game in basketball has really mattered since that point. What are you expecting in terms of energy levels from the crowd, from K-State, from KU in this matchup?
I think it's going to be incredible. I'm so excited. I'm pumped because you mentioned it, right? It's been a while since K-State has had a basketball product that can match KU on the hardwood. And that game that you mentioned here in 2019, how wild was that? With you remember Lagerald Vick? I think that was the last game he ever played for Kansas.
Oh yeah.
Things have changed since then, but I'm expecting a raucous atmosphere. I think for KU, they're fortunate that they played at Missouri this year because I would be very concerned about this team going into this type of environment if they hadn't shown that they could handle it already. But I think a game like this in conference play is a lot different. I think for KU's sake, I'm pretty lucky that this is the first game of the series and not the second game, because those second games are always more challenging, right? Everyone knows each other, but I just look at this in general and say, hey, this is the first time he played. It's the new K-State team. I wonder how they'll be able to guard them in different matchups. So I'm just fascinated with this game overall.
It's going to be a blast. We here are excited about it. Michael Swain is as well. He covers the Kansas Jayhawks for 24/7 Sports and Fog.net. Find him on Twitter at mswain247. He joins us every single Tuesday here on 580 Sports Talk for our 23rd Street Brewery Jayhawk Weekly. Michael, as always, man, we appreciate you taking some time for us. Thank you so much. Enjoy the game tonight, and hopefully, at least for my sake, we're talking about a KU win coming up next week.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you.
That is Michael Swain from Fog.net joining us for our 23rd Street Brewery Jayhawk Weekly. We've got to take one more quick timeout. We'll wrap up 580 Sports Talk with the final word after this.
One more thing. In conclusion, you better wrap it up.
We are wrapping up 580 Sports Talk with a quick final word for me. Rock Chalk Jayhawk. I think KU gets it done today. I think it'll be a close one. Give me Kansas 81, Kansas State 75 at Bramlage Coliseum. I think it'll be a good game. I think it will be a competitive game. I am excited for it. I know the crowd there is already wild. If you're on Twitter, you've already seen maybe some of the chants that K-State fans have been shouting toward KU players. It's the usual one and plenty of others as well. It'll be a blast tonight. Cannot wait to talk about it tomorrow on 580 Sports Talk. We'll be here with you from 3 to 6. Tim Fitzgerald will join us for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up to talk all about it. Don't forget, head to our website, 580WIBW.com, and to our YouTube, Sports on 580WIBW, for Dan Lucero's recap of the action. For Dan, I'm Brendan. We'll talk to you tomorrow on 580 Sports Talk.
Hey, y'all, this is your girl, Cheryl Underwood, and I want to